Hey, what's up guys? Mendel here. Hope you're all doing awesome and wonderful. So in the first videos, we recorded the metal vocals, like the screaming and the clean vocals, and we edited them. And in this video, we're gonna mix the screaming vocals. So as always, let's dig right in. Here we go. Alright, so here we are in the Cubase project. Like in the previous video, everything is nicely edited and ready to be mixed. What I did in the meantime, I added some groups. So I'll first go through the routing just a tiny bit, and then we'll listen to the whole song first. So as you can see, these are my mains, which goes into a main group track, and that group track is routed to the vocal screams master. So I have these left and right vocals, which goes to the left right dub vox, which also go to the vocal screams master. And then the lower vocals go into the screams low bus, and that also goes to the vocal scream master. So in this video, we're not gonna focus on the clean vocals. I'll tell you all about the routing in that video, but I have them like balanced here, so we can just listen to the whole track, including the clean vocals. But so you know, in this video, we're gonna mix the screaming vocals. So I made a rough balance. Of course, all these vocals are unmixed. That's why I make this video, but let's take a listen.
Like a blade of the dead, we fail to perceive all the words of snow. We will put in the years and make a man complete. It is time for revision. Set our differences aside. Segregation, integrity, release our souls from damnation. Let us be purified. Step to salvation. Satisfied all day.
Alright, sounding pretty cool. Metal all the way. Okay, so the first thing I like to do, so as I said before, everything is edited, cleaned up, all the routing is done, and I'll go through the effects track first before I go mixing, so you know what's going on there. So over here, we have my effects channels, and I have a parallel compressor, which I'm gonna use in mixing, and I'm gonna tell you all about the settings later. A reverb, a delay, a mono delay, a vox widener, and a vox distortion. So those are my effects channels which I'm going to use in this mix, and let's start into mixing. So there are a million ways to mix vocals. Everyone mixes differently. I can honestly say how I'm going to mix these vocals today. It could be a total different way of mixing if I would mix these vocals next week, for an example. But there are some things that I do 90% of the time, which I'll be doing here. So the first thing I like to do is filter off everything I don't need on each vocal channel. So that's what I'm going to do now. So what I'll do, I'll go to my my mix channel. So we have the screaming vocals over here. And what I'll do, and I'll first do it on one channel first, but I'll do this on all of them. So let's just listen to this part. I'm going to loop this part.
We define the contours and recognize.
So you see all this low rumble, like even below 50 hertz.
We define the contours and recognize.
I'm gonna filter that away because I don't need it. I don't need 50 hertz from my vocals.
The contours and recognize. We define the contours and recognize. We define.
Yeah, I think for these vocals 100 hertz is perfect. So the cool thing with Cubase is, as you know, or as hopefully you know, so I'm gonna select all of these tracks. So not the groups, just the tracks. These are the lows and that vocal distortion thing. I have the Q link on over here. So when I go to one of the EQs and I say like, let's put it on 100, like we did with that one, done. So all the vocals are filtered. Also why I like this, I like to compress my vocals heavily, and when I filter this off, the low end rumble, like everything below 100 hertz that I personally don't need from the vocals, is not gonna affect the compressor. So that's a big plus. And before I forget, and a very important thing, so we double tracked almost everything. I think just everything. Yeah, we did. So what I personally like to do, and it's totally up to you what you want to do, but what I like to do is have my main vocals like on, if it's on 0 decibel, I have the dub 5 decibels lower below that. So instead of like having two vocals at the same level, the dub is more like supporting the main one. When it comes to the left and right tracks, I have them at the equal level. Alright, so I made a decision EQ wise. I'm gonna mainly focus on doing the EQing on the buses. But before we do that, we need some compression. And I like to compress my vocals heavily. And one of my favorite compressors, easily, is the vintage compressor. This baby right here. I absolutely adore this thing on vocals. So what I like to do, like I said, I like to compress my vocals heavily. And why is that? Because this is extreme music. And even though vocals can be very dynamic, the vocals is, in my opinion, one of the most important things in a mix for most people. Even for non-mixers, vocals is what most people listen to, what they sing along to or scream along to. So what I like to do is compress heavily so I have like an even, like almost like an even output. Sometimes I even limit my vocals, but I like that pushing effect the compressor gives, even with extreme screaming vocals. So that's what I'm gonna use. So I like to put the ratio on 20. And I'll just loop this. Let's solo that one.
As we fail to proceed while the...
So pretty early attack, pretty early release as well. Again, ratio around 20. And I'm aiming for around 10 or perhaps even more than 10 decibels of gain reduction.
Which will push in the ears and make a red drum blurred. As we fail to proceed while the... Which will push in the ears and make a red...
And it makes the vocal sound really aggressive, and I love that in the mix. I love that.
As we fail to proceed while the... Which will push in the ears and make a red drum blurred. As...
So I think we're hitting...
As we fail to proceed while the... Which will push in the ears and make a red drum blurred.
Yeah, it says almost like 19, let's say 20 decibels gain reduction. I like how it sounds, so I'm gonna keep that. So let's A-B that.
As we fail to proceed while...
Okay, you need to volume match it.
While the... Which will push in the ears and make a red drum blurred. As we fail to proceed while the... Which will push in the ears and make a red drum blurred. As we fail to proceed while the... Which will push in the ears and make a red drum blurred.
I love how the compressor is like pushing it. Love that. So just for fun, let's check out that punch function with the attack mode.
As we fail to proceed while the... Which will push in the ears and make a red drum blurred. As we fail to proceed while the...
Could be my ears, but it sounds more aggressive, and I like aggression in this song. So I like these settings. I'm just gonna double check the volume, if like the volume is even.
As we fail to proceed while the... Which will push in the ears and make a red drum.
That sounds fine with me. So I'm gonna copy this compressor to all channels. And like I said before, so we have these filters on here. So everything below 100 hertz won't affect the compressor, which is, in my opinion, a big plus. All right. Also, you might think, so what's this blue thingy here? The vocal disc screen. Secret thingy. We're gonna do something cool with it, and we're gonna do a cool intro effect as well. But for now, let's listen to all these vocals.
Can we define the contours and recognize the eyes which also the same aside? Can we follow the tongue that speaks so many lies?
Wow, that follow the tongue sounds aggressive as hell. Perhaps even too much, but I'm getting excited while mixing it, so I'm gonna keep it like this for now.
Can we follow the tongue
that follow the tongue?
Can we follow the tongue that's
aggressive as hell, but I love it. All right, so I'm gonna bypass all the compressors so you can hear the difference. Let's just loop a section where there are some continuous vocals. So let's do this part. All right, so I'll first do it solo and then I'll do it in the mix. But let's select all of these vocals. So this is with compression.
And we follow the tongue that speaks so many languages. The mouth keeps spitting the same wordless meanings that flow out from the lips like a fatal disease. And we follow the tongue that speaks so many languages. The mouth keeps spitting.
It gets more evened out and more aggressive, like an in-your-face effect. I love that. I love that. Okay, so let's check in the mix.
And we define the contours and recognize the adventures of this innocent. And we follow the tongue that speaks so many languages. The mouth keeps splitting the same wordless meanings that flow up from the lips like a fatal disease. We fail to perceive while the words just flow. We will look at the years and make a man drop bleed. It is time for revenge.
Alright. So after compression, normally I would do some EQ, or before the compressor EQ, but on this mix I'm gonna do EQing mainly on the buses, on each bus. So I'm gonna do some de-essing now on each channel. Now a very cool thing you can do, so let's open frequency. So you can see where it peaks, and don't be too aggressive with this, because when you do take away too much or de-ess too much, it can take some life out of your vocals. So let's just take a listen.
The contours and recognize. We define the contours and recognize. We define the contours and recognize.
I think there's some peaky thingy going on when he says recognize.
We define the contours and recognize. We define
That and around the higher stuff.
the contours and recognize. We define the contours and recognize. We define the contours and...
It's around 10 kilohertz. So just for now, I'm gonna put a de-esser. I'm gonna put one de-esser around, let's say 2 to 4 or something.
And recognize. We define the contours 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 and
then another one around the higher end stuff. Because Daniel used to use a tube mic, which is really, really bright, which is awesome, but for some mixes could be too bright.
And recognize. We define the contours and recognize.
You can see when he says recognize, on that S, it's ducking.
We define the contours and recognize. We define the contours and recognize.
I like how it sounds, so I'm not going to tweak the settings. I'm just going to duplicate now these settings to all channels. Just like so, holding Alt and dragging it along. Copying every de-esser to every channel. Alright. I'm not going to do it on this one. Again, I'm going to do something special with that. So let's take a listen again.
And we define the contours and recognize the adventures of this innocent. And we follow the tongue that speaks so many languages. The mouth keeps splitting the same word.
Okay, so I do hear something in the mid. So now we're going to EQ these vocals. I'm going to use frequency 2 for that. So I hear something going on in the mid. So I'll just loop this section.
We follow the tongue that speaks so many languages. The mouth keeps spitting the same wordless meanings that flow out from the lips like a fatal disease. We fail to perceive while the words just flow out. We put in the years and make a rare drum bleed.
Okay, it sounds pretty good. It sounds a bit too bright, I think. So I'm going to check it in the mix how it sounds when I make it a bit darker.
We follow the tongue that speaks so many languages. The mouth keeps splitting the same wordless meanings that flow up from the lips like a fatal disease.
And I'm going to use the dynamic EQ of that.
We fail to perceive while the words just flow. We put in the years and make a rare drum bleed. It is time for... Can we define the contours and recognize the adventures of this innocent? And we follow the tongue that speaks so many...
So it almost reacts like a de-esser, and I still hear something in the mids, so somewhere in the upper mids.
The same wordless meanings that flow up from the lips like a fatal disease. We feel the mouth keeps splitting the same wordless meanings that flow...
Okay, so that sounds better to me. I'm gonna check it one more time.
Can we define the contours and recognize the adventures of this innocent? And we follow this...
Alright, sounds better. And now I'm going to use these frequency settings the same for that bus. And these are lower vocals. I'm going to EQ them a bit differently. But let's take a listen to how these sound now. So now we're going to check the low screams.
To perceive while the words just flow in.
And just for fun, let's use the channel EQ.
As we fail to perceive while the words just flow in. As we fail to perceive while the words just flow in. As we fail to perceive while the words just flow in. As we fail to perceive while the words just flow in. As we fail to perceive while the words just flow in. As we fail to perceive while the words just flow in. As we fail to perceive while the words just flow in.
Okay, so let's take it in the mix. Okay, that sounds better. And now we're gonna do some last like bus compression. So again, I'm gonna use the vintage compressor. And let's check it how it sounds.
Follow the tongue that speaks so many languages, but the mouth keeps spinning the same word as me.
It's mainly to keep everything in check, and I even think perhaps I could use a limiter, but just for now I'm gonna use the compressor.
It's meanings that flow well from the lips like a fatal disease. We fail to perceive while the words just flow out. We put in the ears and make our eardrum bleed.
Sounds fine by me, gonna copy that again. So there's still some high end going on, which I am not a big fan of. It's too bright. So I'm gonna try how it sounds filtering off some highs. So around 6900 sounds fine by me. And to counter for that filter, I'm just gonna check how it sounds if I just lift it up around 5 kilohertz.
They flow well from the lips like a fatal disease. We fail to perceive while the words just flow out.
Alright, so before I'm gonna add effects, I wanna take a listen to how it sounds now. So I like where this is going. So I think it lags a tiny bit because it's a very bright microphone. I think I'm gonna like add some low mids or something somewhere. I'm just gonna check how it sounds. So this is gonna be done on the vocal stream master. So this affects everything.
And where the body contours and recognize the adventures of this inside. And we follow the tongue that speaks so many languages. The mouth keeps splitting the same word as meanings that flow up from the lips like a fatal disease. We fail to perceive while the words just flow out. We put in the ears and make a eardrum bleed.
And for an example, this is something I almost have never done, but I'm just listening to it and listen to what I'm lacking, because most of the time I cut around lower mids, especially on the vocal stream master. But now when I listen to it, because it's a tube microphone, which is very bright, which is awesome, but perhaps it's lacking a tiny bit of those lower mids. I like how that lower mid boost sounds, so I'm just going to keep it like that. So now let's add some effects. So as I said, I have these effects here, and I have a Fox distortion. That's the thing we're going to start with. So this is just the distortion plugin, because distortion can really add some grit to the vocals. So let's just mute these. I'm gonna loop this section.
Can we
I can solo those.
follow the tongue that speaks so many languages? Can we follow the tongue that speaks so many languages? Can we follow the tongue that speaks so many languages? Can we follow the tongue that speaks so many languages?
Now it does change the EQ curve, so I'm just gonna check what it's doing. So how it changed the vocals, that's like A/B it. So this is with the distortion.
Recognize the eyes which also the same side. And we follow the tongue that speaks so many languages. The mouth keeps spinning, the same words as meanings. They flow up from the lips like a fade of the day. To perceive all the words just flow in the air to make a rare bleed.
So I'm gonna do a tiny bit less and up the volume of the master, vocal master a bit. But then I like to use parallel compression to make it even more aggressive. Use a tube compressor for this, amazing compressor again, just to even things out a bit more on the master bus. So here we go. That sounds pretty cool. Alright, so now let's add the Vox widener. So the Vox widener is like a very short delay. Basically the brain can't even comprehend what's going on sometimes, but left and right delay, so it creates this widening effect. I'll show you what it does. So let's just listen to the Vox and I'll just slide it in.
And we define the contours and recognize the eyes which also the same side. And we follow the tongue that speaks.
So that's way too much, but just to get the effect.
Speak so many languages, the mouth keeps spinning, the same words as meanings, they flow up from the lips like a fatal disease. We fail to perceive the same words as meanings, they flow up from the lips like a fatal disease.
So there's a tiny bit more widening. Then I like to add some delay.
We fail to perceive the same words as meanings, they flow up from the lips.
That's a tiny bit of depth. Then the mono delay centered.
The lips like a fatal disease. We fail to perceive all the words just flow.
Sounds cool. And then the Vox reverb. So just to show you, this is the mono delay with these settings. And I always like to filter off a tiny bit, even a bit more. So like the effect, the delay is darker sounding than the main vocal. So the main vocal will always stay as the main attention. And then I have the stereo delay over here. Same things on filtering. So it's darker than the main vocal.
The years that make a rare dry and we follow the tongue that speaks so many.
And the reverb is Roomworks with the surround vocal plate. I think it sounds awesome.
And we define the contours and recognize the eyes which also the same side.
Let's take a listen from the beginning.
Can we define the contours and recognize the eyes which also the same side. And we follow the tongue that speaks so many languages. The mouth keeps spinning, the same words as meanings, they flow up from the lips like a fatal disease. We fail to perceive all the words just flow. Was it the years that make a rare drop bleed?
Now, as you probably notice, those low vocals are a tiny bit too low. So what I'm gonna do later on, some bit automation to make them pop a bit more. So I still feel there's something going on in the mids that I don't like. So I'm going to use frequency. And I'm going to check out if there's some mid peaks popping out.
Can't wait to find a contours and recognize the adventures of this innocent. Can't wait for the tongue to speak so many languages. The mouth keeps splitting, the same word as meanings. They flow up from the lips like a fatal disease. We fail to perceive while the words just flow out. What in the years that make a man drunk bleed?
That thingy.
Mouth keeps splitting, the same word as meanings. They flow up from the lips like a
But it doesn't show up always, and this one is mainly, so I'll just use the dynamic EQ to make that sit in the mix. And I still think those S's are a bit too bright, so I'm just gonna use frequency dynamic EQ to make that, I don't know, like duck down a bit like a de-esser almost. And during that part, I just hear like a tiny, almost like a radio effect going on, which I'm not pleasant about.
Just flow out. Wasn't the years that make a man drunk bleed? A tongue that speaks so many languages.
So what I think the distortion is lacking some brightness, so I'm just gonna add some of the tone there.
The mouth keeps splitting, the same words as meanings. They flow up from the lips like a fatal disease. We fail to perceive while the words just flow out. Wasn't the years that make a man drunk bleed?
Love how that sounds. Let's take it in solo.
Can't wait to find the contours and recognize the aspects of this innocent. Can't wait for the tongue to speak so many languages. The mouth keeps splitting, the same words as meanings. They flow up from the lips like a fatal disease. We fail to perceive while the words just flow out. Wasn't the years that
So during those lows, I hear like a peaky kind of thing, which I want to fix.
as we fail to perceive while the words just flow in. Fail to perceive while the words just flow in. We fail to perceive while the words just flow in. What in the years that make a man drunk?
That. So a cool thing we can do is make like a haunting effect for the intro. It's gonna be awesome. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna add a stereo track, which go to the main streams, and we're gonna call it Haunted. And we'll add room works to that. For example, I'm gonna turn it off for a sec. So I'll drag this track down to there, and then I'm gonna reverse it. So processes, reverse, done. So then I'll get like a Roomworks and like a hall or something like Hall Arena, which is nice and long, I think. Let's make it longer, like, I don't know, like 6 seconds reverb time. That thing. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna process that, like edit, render in place, render settings, and I have it set around a tail size of 8, which is long, but I'd rather have more than less. Render. So now the reverse vocal gets rendered into the reverb. And now when we are gonna reverse this one, so processes, reverse, now the reverb is reversed, but the vocal is back at its correct position again because we previously already reversed that. We're gonna drag this all along, take a bit off, And we're gonna see where it sounds good. Right? Alright, so we're gonna drag this a bit forward. So let's see how it sounds with the other ones. Awesome. Let's see how it sounds in the mix. Now, one thing to take care of this stuff, normally with the reverb and screaming vocals, there's like a peak going on. So let's just listen to it. There it is. So when I solo it, that thing, that's really peaky, so you want to cut that out so it's more evened out. And I want to have the focus on the guitar a bit over there, so I'll fade it in a tiny bit later, like this. Alright, sounds awesome by me. So we have the distortion thingy going on, the disc jack. So I have it compressed, but even then I'm going to use distortion. And I'm going to make this really nasty and aggressive. That sounds fine by me. So this is without it. With it. And there's some extra delay going on here, so it's like double send into those delays. So let's see how it sounds. Cool. So let's see how it sounds in the mix. Awesome, nice and filthy. So let's do the roundup. Let's do some automation. So I noticed there's some build-up during this part. Right? So what I'll just do is just select that area and just turn it down a tiny bit so it's more evened out. And sometimes you can do it on the separate channels as well. So what I'll do here is I'll lower this channel a tiny bit so the lows get a bit more pronounced. There's a bit more room for the lows. And then I need to make sure that when this kicks in, this is back on volume. Perhaps a tiny bit louder even, and then this one is ducked down a tiny bit. Cool, alright, I like where this is going. So let's check this last thingy. So during that break, when there's no backing music, like no band, this could be lowered so the breakdown itself has more impact. If I keep it like this, it would be too loud. But when I lower it, you probably won't even notice it. So I like those lows a bit more attention-wise than the higher screams. So I'm going to lower the higher screams a tiny bit. So let's take one final listen. Tongue that speaks so many languages, the mouth gets splitter. Alright, and there you go. There are some basics for mixing extreme metal vocals in a metal song. So if you have any questions, please let me know in the comments. And until then, see you next time. Cheers.
Recognize the